They called her the Forgotten Bride. The wind carried the whispers through the dusty village square as the train screeched to a stop. Everyone turned to look. A woman stepped down slowly, clutching a worn suitcase, her beige dress brushing against her boots. Her hair was streaked with silver, her face calm but tired, the kind of tiredness that only comes from years of heartbreak and waiting. The people had gathered because it was wedding day, the day when bachelors of the valley came to choose their brides from among the newcomers. Each man waited nervously, eyes searching for youth, beauty, promise. But when the woman stepped off the train, silence fell. No one moved. No one stepped forward. She was too old, they thought, too plain, too quiet. Her name was Mara Linwood, and she had come a long way not to find a husband, but to find peace. Yet fate had its own plans. Mara had once been promised to a man who never returned from war. For 20 years she lived alone, tending her small garden, sewing dresses for other brides while knowing she would never wear one herself. When the letter came, the frontier town needs settlers. Brides wanted. She almost tore it apart, but something inside whispered, maybe this is your second chance. And so here she was, standing on the platform as laughter and whispers echoed around her. She's old enough to be my mother. Who'd take her? Look at her hands. She's been through too much. Mara looked down. Her hands were rough, yes, hands that had built, cooked, mended, prayed. Hands that had held dreams and buried them. Then, through the crowd came a sound no one expected. The small, clear voice of a child. That's her, the little girl said. That's my mama. Heads turned. Standing near the edge of the platform was a girl no older than 6. Barefoot, her blonde hair tangled by the wind. She ran forward, tears streaming down her face. Before anyone could stop her, she threw her arms around Mara's waist. The crowd gasped. Whose child is that? Where did she come from? Mara froze. The girl's little hands clung to her dress, trembling. You came back for me, the child whispered. You said you would. And in that moment, something in Mara's eyes changed, from surprise to recognition, then to heartbreak. She knelt and looked the girl in the eyes. Sweetheart, what's your name? Lila, the girl said. My papa said you'd come back for us. The murmurs turned into confusion. There was no farther in sight, only men shifting uncomfortably, unsure whether to step forward or step away. The sheriff cleared his throat. Miss, is this your child? Mara looked at the girl, at the frightened hope in her face. Then she looked at the crowd. I don't know, she said softly. But maybe she's the reason I came. The people didn't know what to make of it. Some laughed. Some shook their heads. But one man, standing quietly at the back, his hat low over his eyes, stepped forward. Sheriff, he said, if no one's claimed the bride, I will. Gasps spread again. It was Daniel Rourke, the widowed rancher who hadn't spoken much since his wife died 2 winters ago. The man everyone said would never love again. Mara turned toward him, confused. Why? She asked. He met her eyes. Because my little girl says you're her mama. And maybe she knows something the rest of us don't. The sun dipped low behind the jagged hills, casting long shadows across the empty train platform. The air smelled of iron, dust, and fading smoke. Most of the townsfolk had already drifted away, whispering as they went, but their curiosity lingered in every window that faced the street. Mara stood still, her suitcase in one hand, the little girl clinging to her other. Daniel Rourke had said little since he'd stepped forward, only that she should come with them for supper. No child of mine sleeping in town alone, he'd muttered. And so Mara followed, uncertain, wary, yet unable to turn away from the small hand that held hers so tightly. The road to Rourke Ranch was quiet. The sky burned orange, fading into purple at the edges. Crickets began to sing. Daniel walked a few paces ahead, tall and silent, his hat low over his brow. Lila skipped beside Mara, humming softly, swinging her free arm as though the world had finally righted itself. Papa fixed the fence today, she said cheerfully, and we got a new calf. You'll like her, she's white with brown spots. I named her Clover. Mara smiled faintly. That's a lovely name, dear. The girl grinned up at her. You sound just like I remember. Mara's steps faltered. You remember me? Of course, Lila said, skipping a few steps ahead. You used to sing to me. At night when the stars came out. She turned and pointed toward the horizon. You sang about the moon being a candle, remember? Mara didn't know what to say. She searched her memory for a song, a face, a reason this child might know her, but there was nothing, just a quiet ache deep in her chest. When they reached the ranch, the sky had gone dark. The farmhouse stood sturdy but worn, its porch light flickering weakly. Daniel opened the door and gestured for them to enter. "Ma'am," he said, voice low. "You can set your things there." Mara placed her suitcase near the door. Inside, the home smelled faintly of cedar and bread. A single oil lamp cast warm light across the wooden walls. There were signs of life everywhere. A pair of small shoes by the hearth. A half-finished toy horse on the table. A woman's shawl folded neatly on a chair. "Your wife," Mara murmured, noticing the shawl. Daniel paused, his hand tightening on the back of a chair. "Her name was Anna. She passed 2 winters ago." "I'm sorry," Mara said softly. He nodded, but his eyes didn't meet hers. "We've managed, Lila and me. But the girl's been talking about her mama coming back for months now. Folks thought she was dreamin'. Then you stepped off that train." Mara looked down, and she thought her dream had come true. Daniel leaned against the table, arms crossed. "Maybe it's foolish, but I've learned not to question what a child's heart believes too quick." Before Mara could reply, Lila came running from the kitchen with a loaf of bread and 2 tin cups. "Papa says we always share with guests," she said proudly. "Even the ones heaven sends." Daniel, jaw tightened again, not from anger, but from something he didn't quite understand. They ate quietly. The bread was coarse but warm. Lila talked about the ranch, about the mare that loved apples, the creek that froze in winter, and the stars she counted every night from her window. Daniel listened, occasionally glancing at Mara as though trying to read her face. When the meal was done, Lila yawned and leaned against Mara's arm. "You'll stay, won't you?" she whispered sleepily. "Just for tonight?" Mara hesitated. "If your father doesn't mind." Daniel gave a small nod. "Guest rooms down the hall. Ain't much, but it's clean." Lila's smile widened. "Good, then Mama can tuck me in." Mara froze. The word hit her harder than she expected. She hadn't been called that in. Well, never. She'd once dreamed of motherhood, years ago, before life hardened and hope faded. Now hearing it from this little girl's lips, something fragile stirred within her. After tucking Lila into bed, Mara stood by the window for a long moment, watching the moon climb over the hills. The girl had fallen asleep clutching a small wooden horse in one hand. Mara brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and whispered, "Good night, little one." When she turned, Daniel was standing in the doorway. "She took to you mighty fast," he said quietly. "She's a sweet child," Mara replied. "Lonely, maybe." "Yeah," Daniel said, his voice rough. "Lost her mama when she was barely 4. Buried her myself. Lila don't remember much. Or maybe she does in her own way." He leaned against the door frame. "You from back east?" "Yes," Mara said. "Virginia. My husband," she stopped herself. "He passed many years ago. I had no children, just work and silence." Daniel studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Life's got a way of bringing folks where they need to be, even when they don't know why." Mara smiled faintly. "Maybe so." He turned to leave, but paused. "You're welcome to stay here till you figure where you're headed. Town'll talk, but they talk anyway." "Thank you," she said softly. After he left, Mara sat on the edge of the small bed in the guest room. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened her suitcase. Inside was a folded photograph, faded, creased at the corners. A younger version of herself, smiling beside a man in uniform. The man's face was almost lost to time. She touched it gently, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you trying to tell me?" Outside, the wind picked up. The house creaked, the horses shifted in their stalls, and from the other room came the sound of a child's soft breathing, peaceful, trusting, certain that her mama had finally come home. But Mara Linwood wasn't sure who she was anymore. A stranger, a lost soul, or perhaps something more.